Aaron Donald's workout with the Rams was only the beginning. After it was over, he made a shocking announcement that has the entire NFL wondering if one of the greatest defensive players ever is coming out of retirement. Let me catch you up. Let's start with what actually happened, because this is the part that got everyone's attention. On a Wednesday at the Rams training complex, Aaron Donald put on a helmet and worked out with his old team. Aaron Donald completed a formal 45-minute workout in helmet and pads with the Rams, and a decision on his return to the NFL could be imminent. 45 minutes, full gear at the team facility. That's not a guy just staying in shape on his own time. That's a guy testing whether his body can still do this at an NFL level. Here's why this wasn't just another private session. Because the workout was held at the Rams team facility and Donald used official gear, the Rams are required to report his participation to the league or risk disciplinary action. So the team had no choice. They had to tell the NFL, and once that happens, it goes on paper. Word of Donald's workout appeared on the NFL's official transaction log released at 4 p.m. ET daily. Every team in the league, every reporter with a login, everybody saw it at the same time. The NFL actually labeled the session the three-time Defensive Player of the Year, who last played in 2023, worked out for the Rams on Wednesday per the NFL transaction report, which officially labeled it a tryout on the Daily Wire. Think about that word for a second. Tryout. Aaron Donald, three-time Defensive Player of the Year, Super Bowl champion, a lock for the Hall of Fame, showed up to what the league's own paperwork called a tryout. That's the kind of headline that stops you mid-scroll. Now let's get into how he actually looked, because the details here matter. ESPN's Adam Schefter reported Donald wanted to work out in a helmet and used the Rams equipment at the team's facility, requiring the activity to be reported to the league. The all-time great defensive tackle did not wear pads during the session, per Schefter. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy in the reporting. Some outlets say pads, some say no pads, but everyone agrees on the core fact. He wanted the real experience. Helmet on. Team gear, not some backyard drill session with a resistance band. And the Rams organization wasn't hiding how they felt about it. Head coach Sean McVay stood in front of reporters and got a direct question about whether this looked like a tryout. His answer became the line of the day. Did it come across as a tryout? Rams coach Sean McVay asked NFL media members gathered after practice. Best tryout we've ever had. That's not a coach being coy. That's a coach who just watched a future Hall of Famer move around his practice field and couldn't help himself. McVay didn't stop there either. He went a step further and said out loud what everyone was already thinking. That was honestly our way of being able to get a workout with him within the parameters of what's necessary. McVay said Wednesday on NFL Daily Translation. This was the Rams finding a legal, league-approved way to put their guy through the paces without technically signing him. It's a workaround, and it worked. But McVay isn't the only voice in this story. This is where Miles Garrett comes in, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, acquired by the Rams in a trade. That, as we'll get into, is the entire reason this comeback conversation exists in the first place. Garrett has made it clear he wants Donald on that field with him. He put it simply, if Donald's here, he's excited to have him as a teammate, as his partner in crime. That's not a throwaway line from a random locker room. That's the guy the Rams traded for, essentially recruiting a legend to come rush the passer next to him. Then there's Jared Verse, the Rams' own young star up front, the 2024 Defensive Rookie of the Year. Verse is the guy who's already lived the old man workout. He went to Donald's house this summer, got put through the paces in Donald's home gym, and came out the other side with a new appreciation for what a genuine Aaron Donald training session actually looks like. When your current best defensive lineman is calling up the retired guy just to learn from him, and the retired guy answers, that tells you something about where Donald's head is at. 3 voices, 3 different angles. A head coach calling it the best tryout of his life. A former Defensive Player of the Year, publicly hoping to line up next to him. And a young star already living proof that Donald hasn't lost a step in the weight room. All of that before Donald has even made a decision. TMZ had actually been tracking this for weeks before The Wire made it official. The update comes weeks after TMZ Sports published footage of Donald on the practice field at the Rams facility in Woodland Hills on July 10. Cameras caught him running drills long before the league paperwork forced anyone's hand. 31 NFL teams let out a collective "oh boy," because Aaron Donald booked an official workout with the Los Angeles Rams, meaning the future Hall of Famer might actually unretire to play alongside Miles Garrett. And here's the thing that made this workout different from every rumor before it. Every single outlet covering it, CBS, Fox, NFL.com, the Washington Post, used almost the exact same language. Not could return, not might consider. They called it a step, a real tangible step. Aaron Donald formally worked out for the Los Angeles Rams on Wednesday, presumably taking one of the final steps before the superstar defensive tackle decides whether to end his 2-1-2-year retirement. That phrase, final steps, is doing a lot of work. This wasn't presented as speculation anymore. This was presented as the last item on a checklist before an announcement. So that's the moment. That's why this workout blew up the internet the way it did. A 3-time Defensive Player of the Year in a helmet on an NFL practice field, with the league's own transaction wire confirming it happened. Now let's back up and figure out how we even got here. Because 2.5 years ago, this same man walked away from football and told everyone he was done for good. To understand why this workout hit as hard as it did, you have to go back to how Aaron Donald left the game in the first place. Because this wasn't a guy who limped out the door on a bad knee. He walked away at the top. Donald spent his entire career with one franchise. The defensive tackle, who turns 33 in May, spent 10 seasons in the NFL, all with the Los Angeles Rams franchise. 10 years, one team. That kind of loyalty is rare in modern football, where stars get traded, cut, or chase bigger contracts elsewhere every offseason. Donald never did any of that. He was drafted by the Rams, and he stayed a Ram. His path started in the Midwest before the franchise ever moved west. Donald was the 13th overall pick by the Rams in the 2014 draft, and he spent 2 seasons with them in St. Louis, winning the 2014 Defensive Rookie of the Year award before the team relocated to LA. So he was there for the move. He was there for the rebuild. He was there for all of it. The Rams eventually broke through, but not without some heartbreak first. They reached the Super Bowl in 2019, losing 13-3 to the New England Patriots, but Donald was able to add a Super Bowl ring to his accomplishments after the Rams beat the Cincinnati Bengals 23-20 in their own stadium in LA, winning a championship in your own building, in front of your own fans. That's about as good as it gets for a career capstone. A lot of players would have taken that ring and ridden out a few more mediocre seasons collecting paychecks. Donald didn't need to do that, and it turns out he'd actually thought about walking away even earlier than people realized. Donald hinted he was contemplating retirement during the Super Bowl run in 2022 before returning with the Rams, but his announcement on Friday came as a surprise. So this wasn't some sudden impulse. The idea had been sitting with him for a while. He just kept playing anyway. Then, out of nowhere for most fans, he made it official. Aaron Donald, one of the NFL's greatest defensive players, has announced his retirement with immediate effect. No farewell tour, no extended goodbye season. He just posted it, and that was that. His statement was short and to the point, thanking the organization and the fans for the ride. He talked about giving everything he had to the game, every single day, mentally and physically, for his whole career. And he made a point of noting how rare his path had been. Drafted by one team, winning a championship with that team, and retiring with that same team. That's the emotional core of why this comeback conversation carries so much weight. He didn't just play for the Rams. He built his entire football identity around them. Walking back into that building for a workout isn't like some journeyman testing the market. It's a legend, potentially rewriting the ending of a story he already closed the book on. His numbers back up exactly why the football world reacted the way it did to any hint of a return. Across his career, the production was absurd for a defensive tackle, a position that almost never racks up the kind of sack totals reserved for edge rushers. The Super Bowl champion has won Defensive Player of the Year 3 times, recording 542 tackles, 111 sacks, and 24 forced fumbles. 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards is a number shared by only a handful of players in league history. 8 All-Pro nods and 10 Pro Bowl selections on top of that. This isn't a guy trying to relive past glory because he's bored. This is one of the most dominant interior defensive linemen the sport has ever produced, and everyone in the building knew it. For a while after the announcement, the door seemed shut for good. The following spring, as the Rams went through their normal off-season program, reporters noted the obvious. There will be one distinct difference between this season and prior off-seasons. Future Hall of Fame defensive tackle Aaron Donald won't be there, at least not as a member of the active roster. That line, at least not as a member of the active roster, is doing some quiet foreshadowing there, because even then, people weren't ready to say the door was fully closed. Donald wasn't showing up to sign autographs and disappear into broadcasting. He was still around, still visible, still, by all accounts, in ridiculous shape. And that's really the piece that kept the comeback conversation alive, even when there was zero official news. A big part of that stems from the fact that Donald continues to keep himself in incredible shape and looks like he could get back on the field tomorrow and dominate once again. He wasn't posting from a beach. He was posting from a weight room. Every workout video that hit social media was basically fuel for a rumor that never fully died. In fact, at one point, Donald himself seemed to close the door directly. For his part, Donald shut down any idea he'll return to the field for the Los Angeles Rams. While he won't be returning to help the Rams by suiting up on Sundays, he is willing to lend a hand to the new generation of Rams defensive line stars in a different way. That's the piece that makes this whole story so wild in hindsight. He said no, directly, and then a specific event changed everything. So Donald retired at the absolute peak of his standing in the sport, with a Hall of Fame case already fully written, and by every indication, that was supposed to be the end of it. He said no to a comeback. He moved into a mentor role instead, working out with the next generation in his own house. Nobody expected that no to have an expiration date, but it did. And the reason it did has a name: Miles Garrett. That trade is where this entire chain of events actually starts. If you want to know why Aaron Donald suddenly started thinking about football again, after telling everyone he was done, you don't have to guess. He said it himself, and it all traces back to one trade. The Rams pulled off one of the biggest defensive moves of the offseason. Donald apparently began to entertain the idea of a comeback early last month, after the Rams traded for Garrett, one of Donald's few contemporary peers. The 30-year-old Garrett won 2 of the last 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards. In Cleveland, where he received 5 All-Pro nods and 7 Pro Bowl selections, along with setting the NFL's single-season sacks record last year. That's not just any acquisition. That's the best pass rusher in football, walking into the same building where Donald's legacy lives. Donald himself confirmed the connection publicly, and this is worth sitting on for a second, because it's the actual origin point of everything that followed. After the Rams acquired star pass rusher Miles Garrett in a June 2 swap with the Cleveland Browns, Donald told ESPN's Pat McAfee that the trade caused him to start thinking about returning to his former team. So this isn't reporters connecting dots after the fact. Donald told a national audience directly that watching his old team land Garrett is what flipped the switch in his head. Think about the timing and the psychology of that. Donald had already said no to a comeback once. He was in mentor mode, running workouts at his house for guys like Verse. Then his old franchise brings in a player who's argued to be the best defensive player alive right now. And suddenly Donald's competitive instincts kick back in. It's one thing to watch your old team from a distance. It's another thing to watch them build a defensive line that might legitimately be historic, and realize you could be part of it. The Rams didn't give up nothing for Garrett either. The Rams included Jared Verse as part of the trade package for Garrett. Wait, that detail actually needs a correction, because Verse remained with the Rams, and it was Donald himself running private workouts with Verse, not a trade piece. What is accurate is the shape of the defensive front the Rams built around this move. Even so, the team's defensive front is already seen as one of the league's best as things stand. Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk are in position to handle starting duties along the interior, with Garrett and Byron Young atop the edge rush depth chart. So picture that room, Turner and Fisk inside, Garrett and Young off the edge. That's already a scary group on paper. Now add a healthy, motivated Aaron Donald into that rotation, even in a reduced role. Adding Donald to that mix, presumably to have him handle a lower workload than his prime years, would add further to the potential of the unit. Nobody's expecting him to play 70 snaps a game like he did in his prime. But even a part-time Aaron Donald changes the math for opposing offensive lines. The chatter didn't stay quiet for long either. Rumblings of a potential return for Donald surfaced in June, after the Rams' blockbuster trade for reigning Defensive Player of the Year Miles Garrett, and the chatter has only intensified in the weeks since. That Donald could return to the team for whom he starred for 10 seasons. June turned into July. July turned into August, and every week added another layer to the story instead of letting it die down. By mid-July, the reporting had gotten specific enough that it stopped sounding like idle speculation. Ian Rappaport put a timeline around it. On July 16, NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reported that Donald does not really know himself if he'll end his retirement and plan to get in football shape. throughout the coming weeks before making a decision. That's a real distinction. This wasn't the media inventing a storyline out of nothing. It was Donald himself, by Rappaport's account, genuinely undecided and using his own body as the test. And the front office side of it matters just as much as the emotional side. General Manager Les Snead laid out exactly what it would take for Donald to actually commit. And it wasn't about age or contract numbers, it was about mentality. According to reporting from ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, Snead sees Donald as someone who will only come back if he can do it fully. All in, ready to go, no half measures. That's a pretty telling standard for a front office to set. They're not trying to talk him into a part-time farewell tour. They want the real thing or nothing. That same reporting suggested a real arrangement could be in place by the start of training camp, even though a final decision on unretiring hadn't been made yet. So even weeks before the helmet and pads workout that lit up the transaction wire, the pieces were already being assembled behind the scenes. Donald wasn't just posting workout videos for fun. He was building toward a decision point. On a timeline the organization was quietly tracking right alongside him. There's also a personal history layer to why Garrett specifically was the trigger and not just any big-name signing. These two are widely regarded as two of the best interior-to-edge rushers of their generation, and there's a mutual respect there that goes beyond typical locker room diplomacy. Garrett has talked about wanting to learn from Donald's technique, studying his tape, picking his brain on how he attacks matchups, and offering the same in return. That's not a rookie gushing about a legend. That's a former Defensive Player of the Year, still in his prime, treating Donald as a peer he wants in the building. So by the time August rolled around, you had all the ingredients sitting there. A legend who'd already said no once, a front office quietly building the framework for a return. A training program Donald had been running on his own for weeks, and a locker room full of guys from Garrett to Verse publicly rooting for him to say yes. All that was missing was the moment where it became real. And that's exactly what the workout on the practice field turned into. Before we get to what happens next, it's worth walking through just how many signals piled up in the weeks leading into that workout. Because this wasn't a story that broke out of nowhere. It built piece by piece, almost like a countdown. It started with cameras. Donald was later spotted going through individual drills at Los Angeles' facilities via TMZ Sports. No official announcement, no team statement. Just a guy showing up and running drills and a camera crew happening to catch it. That's usually enough to start a rumor cycle on its own, but this one had legs because of who it was. Then came the pattern of visits. Sources close to the situation described Donald putting real focus into his conditioning, treating this like actual football preparation rather than a retired guy staying in shape for Instagram. The update comes weeks after TMZ Sports published footage of Donald on the practice field at the Rams facility in Woodland Hills on July 10, with our sources telling us he was putting in some serious focus on conditioning. McVay, for his part, spent weeks being asked about it constantly and giving answers that were carefully worded but never actually closed the door. At one point, he told reporters there wouldn't be any real news until the team got back to their training complex, adding that there were loose temporary timelines he wanted to keep private out of respect for Donald and the situation, but he was clear about the trajectory. Things were heading in the right direction, he said, and if there was an arrow on the graph, it was pointing up. That's a coach threading a needle. He's not confirming a signing. He's not denying a signing. He's basically saying, watch this space. And every time he gave an answer like that, it added another log to the fire. The broader context around the team only made the stakes higher. This isn't a rebuilding roster hoping for a miracle. Expectations are already high for the Rams heading into their 2026 campaign, as they added Garrett and star cornerback Trent McDuffie to a squad that advanced to the NFC Championship game last season. So the Rams are already good. They're already being talked about as contenders. Adding a game-wrecking interior presence, even in a part-time role, isn't a desperate move. It's a title-hunting move. The potential return of Donald would undoubtedly provide a boost to Los Angeles' championship hopes as well. Quarterback Matthew Stafford, who's been running this offense for years and has seen just about everything in an 18-year career, has spoken glowingly about how the team's practices have looked heading into the season, calling the level of quality among the best he's experienced at this stage of his career. When your starting quarterback is saying practice tape looks that good before Donald even officially rejoins, you get a sense of just how loaded this roster already is, with or without him. Then there was the specific idea, floated earlier in the offseason, that Donald might not even need to come back right away, that he could ease in midway through the season, instead of grinding through a full training camp at 35 years old. Donald, 35, had previously been mentioned as a candidate to suit up midway through the season. That framing matters, because it tells you the Rams weren't thinking about this as an all-or-nothing binary. They were building flexibility into the plan, almost like they expected the answer to eventually be yes, and just needed to figure out when. By the time reporters got another crack at Donald and McVay together, the vibe had shifted from if to when. Analysts covering the Rams pointed out something simple but pretty telling. Every single update on this story, from the very first TMZ clip to the latest transaction wire entry, moved the needle closer to a return. Not one report in the whole stretch suggested he was leaning the other way. That's a rare thing in NFL rumor cycles, where speculation usually swings back and forth. This one only moved in a single direction. And then on that Wednesday, it stopped being background noise entirely. The workout happened, the wire logged it, and every outlet covering the NFL dropped what they were doing to cover it. Former Los Angeles Rams superstar Aaron Donald hinted at an NFL return earlier this summer, and on Wednesday, he took a significant step toward rejoining the team. The word hinted had officially graduated into took a significant step. Even with all of that, there was still real uncertainty about how the actual session went physically, which kept the story from tipping all the way into a done deal. While Donald stayed in excellent shape during his retirement and regularly posted workout videos, he needs to prove his athleticism remains at an NFL caliber level to join the Rams. It is not clear how Wednesday's workout went, nor how his body will respond. Looking jacked in an Instagram clip and holding up over a full football practice at 35 are two very different tests. Nobody outside that facility, coaches included, could say for certain, yet how his body handled the load. That uncertainty is actually part of what made this such a compelling story instead of a simple yes or no. Every domino had fallen in Donald's favor. The trade, the training, the private workouts with Verse, the public comments from Garrett, the coded optimism from McVay. And yet the single most important variable, whether a 35-year-old body can still do this at an NFL level, after 2.5 years away, was still an open question that only the workout itself could start to answer. So heading into that Wednesday session, this wasn't a mystery about whether Donald wanted to come back. That part had been answered for weeks. The real mystery was whether he still could. And that's exactly the question the formal helmet and pads workout was designed to start answering, which brings the story right back to where we opened and to where it's headed next. So where does all of this actually leave things? Because a workout, even a formal one logged on the league wire, isn't a signature on a contract. It's a step, a big one, but a step. Here's the honest state of play right after the session. Now we wait for an official word from Donald himself. That's it. That's where the story sits. Every outlet, every insider, every teammate has said their piece. Garrett wants him there. McVay called it the best tryout of his career. Verse already knows firsthand what Donald's training looks like up close, but none of that adds up to a signed deal. McVay has been consistent about not rushing this. McVay said last week that no decision from Donald would come during training camp, but mentioned, regarding Donald's status, that things were going in the right direction. That's the organization's stance in plain terms. They're not putting a deadline on a legend. They're letting him work through it on his own clock. And that patience isn't just talk. The team has structured this entire process to remove pressure from Donald's side. Donald has been working out at the Rams' Woodland Hills training complex and at home for several weeks in his attempt to return to NFL shape, while the Rams have emphasized their willingness to wait indefinitely for Donald to decide. Coach Sean McVay has expressed cautious optimism in the past week. Indefinitely. That's the word the organization is using. They'd rather get this right than get it fast. Garrett echoed that same patience when asked directly about pushing Donald one way or another. He said there's a lot the two of them could learn from each other, that he'd love to pick Donald's brain on how he attacks his matchups, and that he thinks the respect runs both directions given everyone who's ever rushed the passer has studied Donald's tape at some point. But he was clear that the decision isn't his to make. He said he doesn't want to push Donald one way or the other, framing it as something only Donald himself can work through. Adding Donald to a D-line that sports Garrett would give the Rams 2 players, who combined for 5 of the past 9 Defensive Player of the Year awards, with Garrett earning 2 of the past 3, 5 of the last 9. That's the kind of number that tells you exactly why the league can't stop talking about this. There's also a bigger picture sitting quietly underneath all of this, one that has nothing to do with whether he plays another down. Donald's Hall of Fame case was already locked before any of this comeback talk started. A nearly certain Pro Football Hall of Fame selection when his eligibility arrives 5 years post-retirement. Donald had 111 career sacks in 10 NFL seasons with the Rams. That clock resets if he comes back and plays again, pushing his eligibility further down the road, which tells you something about how much this decision actually means to him. He's not doing this to pad a resume that's already bulletproof. If he comes back, it's because he genuinely wants one more run at it. And that's really the heart of why this story has gripped the league the way it has. This isn't a fringe player looking for one last paycheck. It's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, a Super Bowl champion, a guy who left the game once, already on his own terms and meant it, and who is now, by every indication from his own front office and his own new teammates, seriously circling back around. The bigger picture around the roster only raises the stakes further. Analysts ranking the league's top defensive tackles heading into the season have openly wondered where Donald would even land on that list. If he suits up next to names like Jeffrey Simmons, NFL's top 5 defensive tackles in 2026, Jeffrey Simmons at number 1. What about Aaron Donald? That's a question nobody could seriously ask about a retired player a year ago. Now it's a live debate. Fans and analysts have leaned into the idea that this is close to a formality at this point, even without a signature yet. It's not clear how much can be gleaned from a non-padded workout for a defensive tackle. But there's no reason to doubt that Donald could return and wreak havoc as a 35-year-old. On a defensive line loaded with talent. Wreak havoc. That's the phrase the league's own coverage is using, about a guy who's been out of football for 2.5 years. So here's where things actually stand as of right now. The workout happened. The Wire confirmed it. The coach called it the best tryout of his career. The new teammate says he's ready to welcome him with open arms. The young star has already felt what Donald's training looks like up close. The front office has said the only thing that matters is Donald showing up all in. No half measures. And Donald himself, by his own account to Pat McAfee, has admitted the Garrett trade is what got him thinking about this in the first place. What's still missing is the actual decision. Not a hint, not a workout, not a coded quote from a press conference. An actual answer, one way or the other. Every signal in this story has pointed the same direction for weeks now, and nothing has come along to reverse that trend. But until Donald says the word himself, the Rams, the fans, and the rest of the league are all stuck in the same spot, waiting on the answer only one man can give. And whichever way it goes, the fact that it's even a real question again, after a retirement that once looked completely final, says everything about how much this game still means to him, and how much one blockbuster trade for one generational pass rusher was enough to pull a legend back to the edge of a comeback.